All right, here we are again. I'm going to be discussing really, I think the last topic I need to hit on, at least in terms of the chemistry stuff here, and that is really the description of what are acids and bases, and honestly, why are these important to us? I mean, at least to answer a little bit of why are acids and bases important to us, it really kind of goes back to a lot of what I've already been saying, which is the body needs to maintain homeostasis. And this is a big key concept. And one of the things that needs to be in balance outside of everything else is how acidic or alkaline a particular solution is in the body. And anything that gets us a little bit out of the correct range can cause major problems within the body. So what we really need to do is kind of take a look at this and really discuss what are acids and what are bases and what does that mean to us. So acids and bases, very simply, are particular types of what are referred to as electrolytes. So an electrolyte is an ionically bonded substance. So remember ionic bonding from one of our other podcasts here. So an ionic bonded substance is something that has these charged ions that are electrically attracted to one another. When you put this into water, a lot of times these ionically bonded substances are going to dissociate, kind of like when you put salt into water, it dissolves and it goes to its separate ions. Acids are just particular types of electrolytes, and instead of releasing any particular type of ion, they release one very specific type of ion into solution, and that is that hydrogen ion or H plus ion. So an acid is an electrolyte that releases hydrogen ions into solution or water. A base is a substance that releases any ion that could combine with a hydrogen ion. A lot of times we refer to this bases as ones that release an OH negative ion or a hydroxyl ion is usually one of the easiest or most common ones to remember types of bases, but there are other ones that release different ions into solution. A salt is something that when a lot of times you put an acid and a base into solution, you end up with a salt, like the one shown down there, which is two ionically bonded substances, and neither one is hydrogen ion or hydroxyl ion. So that's like NaCl would be a salt. And a lot of times that can come about when you put an acid and a base together. So acids and bases are inorganic compounds. So acids, these are, again, just to kind of rehash and go through this one more time, acids are substances which release hydrogen ions when they're in solution. The more hydrogen ions that are released into solution, the more acidic it is. And what does this mean to us? Well, if you get too much acidity, it can cause problems with different proteins. So it can break bonds. It can cause proteins to unfold or fold into different shapes. And again, it can mess with cell function in general. So really important that this stays within the right range. And a lot of times when we're talking about the particular range, how we measure acids and bases is by a thing called the pH scale, which is really looking at the concentration of hydrogen ions in solution. So it's what we refer to as a logarithmic scale. So 1 on a pH scale would be a particular level. 2 is 10 times different than that. So if we're looking at hydrogen ions and neutral, the neutral pH is 7 on the scale. So something that would have a pH of 8 is a little bit more acidic. So 9 would be 10 times, 8 would be more basic. 9 would be 10 times more alkaline or basic than 8. 10 would be 10 times more than 9 and 100 times more than 8. So it's kind of like a Richter scale. So remember like the earthquake scale? A 5 on the Richter scale is a particular strength. 6 is 10 times worse. 7 would be 100 times worse. 8's 1,000 times worse. It's a similar thing here. So acidic pHs are anything less than a pH of 7. And the closer it gets to 0 on the scale, the more acidic it is going to be. A base or an alkaline is going to be anything higher than 7. And the further it goes up that scale, the closer to 14, the more basic or alkaline it's going to be. So acids, I can give you some examples. So this is kind of showing you a pH paper color look across the bottom of the pH scale. So anything less than 7, again, is going to be the acid. So hydrochloric acid in the stomach is a good example. You can see it's a pH of in between 1 and 2, but you can see some other things in there as well. So coffee is a little bit acidic. It's about a 5. Lemon juice or vinegar is down in that 2-3 range. Bases, like I said, are substances which release hydroxyl ions or other things that can combine with a hydrogen ion, and they have pHs greater than 7. And again, the stronger the base, the higher that number is going to be, up to 14. When we're looking at normal body pH or normal physiological pH, it's usually in a range from about 7.35 to about 7.45. That's going to be that kind of normal range, which is slightly alkaline on the pH scale. So neutral pH on the pH scale is a 7. We're talking about normal body pH, again, 7.35 to 7.45, a little bit alkaline. Bases, they can also damage the cells, so things like ammonia, very bad for the cells. That's why we try to get rid of our nitrogen-containing compounds in our urine. So you can see ammonia, soapy water up in that 11 to 12, bleach 13. So those are your more alkaline type of things here. And the salts, kind of last one here, it is pretty much ionic bonded substance that doesn't have a hydrogen ion or an OH ion or hydroxyl ion in it. These are things like salt, so NaCl, that you put them in water and they're going to dissolve really well. Again, like I said, and that means they're really strong electrolytes. And again, the pH on those would be 7 because they have no hydroxyl ions, they have no hydrogen ions. And these end up being really important in the body because there's a lot of different, and when you talk about different electrolytes and electric balance in the body, you're really referring to ions from these different salts. So calcium ions, potassium ions, sodium ions, chlorine ions. These are all important ions that we're going to see in the body. And moving these in or out of the cells can allow the body to send signals or other things as well. So calcium ions function in the contraction of muscle, as well as sodium and potassium ions in the the nerve impulse conduction. And we're going to see, and we'll get into this a lot more in other chapters, but we do have a lot of mechanisms in place in order to resist changes in this acid and basing there. Again, because we have such a tight range, that 7.35 to 7.45, it makes sense that we have a number of systems in place to try to keep those pH changes from going too high or too low. So we do it by respiratory regulation. We have different chemical buffers. We use our kidneys to get rid of some of this as well. And buffers, really what they are going to be in is these are compounds that take a strong acid and convert it into a much weaker one, or take a strong base and convert it into a much weaker one through the use of a salt. And that's how a lot of times we have these in place. So we have a couple of different types of buffer systems in place that I will discuss with you at a later show here.